Quite honestly, there are some terms in bookkeeping that really scared me when I first started out, and payroll was definitely one of them. Because my name is Rachel Brown, this is Realistic Bookkeeping. I have tried to make a series, the Basics of Bookkeeping series, just a playlist of videos that really quickly and efficiently go through some of the terms that you need to know as a bookkeeper: accounts payable, accounts receivable, bank reconciliation, and now payroll, so that you can kind of go through and decide, number one, is bookkeeping something that you want to get into? Are these things that you already know something about and therefore have a skill set to bring to your clients? Or are you just learning some things as you are a bookkeeper or you have a bookkeeping business and are offering these services to your clients? I will be straightforward with you. Payroll is something that not all bookkeepers offer, and I think that it can set you apart from other bookkeepers if you do offer this service. But don't feel like you have to. If you get midway through this video and you feel the anxiety, you feel the stress, and you don't feel like you're ready for it, don't take it on. It's not something that you have to do, but I would love to make a video to help explain what payroll is, how easy it is to run payroll, but then some of the tax liabilities that you need to be aware of, and some of the processes that you may take on if you take on payroll. So before we get into it, I just want to quickly say a couple of things. Number one, I would love if you subscribe. If you feel like you've been in a couple of my videos and they've been helpful, then I would love if you stick around. I am definitely on my consistent track of making weekly YouTube videos, and I would love for them to pop up on your YouTube to be something helpful to you each week. If I have not made a video on something that you think would be really helpful, then please just leave it down in the comments. I'm always open to criticism. I'm open to new ideas. So I would love to hear those down below. If this series has been really helpful, let me know some things that as you've been researching becoming a bookkeeper or getting started in bookkeeping, you think that the Basics of Bookkeeping series needs. We've done payroll, we've done accounts receivable, accounts payable, reconciliation. I've named those, and I have a couple more coming, but please let me know your ideas because I make these videos so that they're helpful to you. The way that I make my list of new videos that I want to make is I go back to when I started this whole bookkeeping adventure, and I think, what would I have looked for on YouTube and what would have been helpful to me? I will list like my most popular week one video if you've randomly landed here and have never seen it before. But that's when I very first started out, and I've come all the way to quitting my full-time job and working for myself. I'll post that video here of how I quit and became a bookkeeper full-time. Second thing is that I just want to give a quick mention to, and I haven't done this, I don't think in any of my other videos, but because I've moved from part-time bookkeeping to full-time bookkeeping, I have now realized how helpful this laptop has been for me. So if you're starting to get into bookkeeping and you already have a laptop, use what you have. But if you're going to start this venture and you don't already have a computer that is your go-to, I would certainly recommend this HP laptop, specifically because it has a number pad on the keyboard, and that is crucial as a bookkeeper because you're going to use numbers quite a lot. I will list a link to that down below, but let's get into it. What is payroll?
So let's get into the basics of payroll. By the way, you can find this entire presentation as a downloadable PDF down below in the description. And for all of the Basics of Bookkeeping series, each one has a PDF that you can download and then reference later. So the first thing that we need to understand about payroll is that it's basically literally paying employees, okay? And now sometimes the definition of employee can be a little bit weird, right? So like, is the owner run in payroll or do they get their own separate owner's draw? Are there people that are salary versus hourly? All of those, nuances for each business that are different. But it's paying the employees, and payroll is the process of paying the employees their earned wages for a given period of time. Also going to differ on the business. Some are weekly payroll, some are bi-weekly, so every other week. Some are monthly payroll services. So you should be given that information from your client of when you're expected to run the payroll. Payroll liabilities need to be paid to the corresponding Department of Taxation on set schedules. And by that, I mean either federal to the IRS or state to whatever state that you are paying payroll within. I know that some can get a little tricky if you have businesses that are paying employees in different states. If that's the case, you would definitely want to work with the employer on what exactly you should do, and probably their CPA as well. And then notating the wages, taxes, and any other deductions like retirement, HSA accounts that are important when bookkeeping. So you are going to need to know what they're paying into all of those accounts so that you can put that into their accounting software if it does not automatically do so for you. So let's go through the outline of payroll. Payroll, to be honest, even if you've already decided from what I've said, no, this is too complicated, I don't want to take it on as a bookkeeper, it's really not that complicated in the outline of what it really is, right? So you're going to need, number one, a really strong line of communication with your client. I don't think that I've ever run a payroll for any of my clients where I haven't reached out, double checked something, made a clarification. And this is important to not skip over the communication, because when you need it, when you need something clarified, you should not make an assumption on payroll. You do not want your payroll accounts and payments to be incorrect. Number one, you don't want it to be incorrect for the employee. If they have worked a certain number of hours, then that's the rightful amount of compensation that they've earned. You also don't want to overpay, because you need to protect your employer, your client's books. But you need a strong line of communication so that everything is correct. But really, when you go to run payroll, you need the list of employees that are going to be paid for that period. And then you need the employee hours if you have employees that are earning compensation on an hourly basis. It's possible that your client only has salary employees or a base pay employees. But most of the time, they're going to be hourly, or there's going to be some mixed in. And then you're going to get that information from a timesheet or perhaps a manager or the owner of the business. From that information, you're going to enter the hours into payroll and then pretty much run payroll. That's pretty much it. Now, after you've run the payroll, then you're going to either print or handwrite the checks or process direct deposits. There could be a mix of these, writing checks and then processing direct deposit. Maybe not all of the employees have direct deposit. Perhaps none of the employees have direct deposit. And by printing or writing the checks, I very literally mean sitting down and writing the paychecks or printing them out through this unprinted checks and having the owner or the signer on the account sign those checks to hand them to the employees. But let's go over really quickly just this payroll liability section, because it is important to understand that when a company is running payroll, then that means that they are also withholding, doing the withholding that they need to for taxes and paying those to either the federal government or to the state. And so obviously for the federal government, that's the IRS. For your state, that would be literally like the Department of Taxation for your state. And there really are two main categories of payroll liabilities: withholding and unemployment. And you have withholding for the federal, withholding for the state. You have unemployment for the federal and unemployment for the state. However, it is important to note that when you pay your federal withholding for your client for the payroll, there's also Medicare in there and Social Security. So it's kind of like all bundled into one. And those payments may be made weekly, monthly, or on quarterly schedules. It all depends on the size of the company and the payroll software and how long the company has been in operation and how long they've been running payroll. So those are things that if payroll has already been run before and maybe has been ongoing and you're just jumping in, then you would want to ask some questions about those payments, about those schedules. And then if it hasn't been set up before, you're really going to need to understand what type of schedule they're going to be on, etc. Now, if you're setting up payroll, and I've noted this down at the bottom, setting up payroll takes a lot of extra work, and documentation for the company. You may need to work with your client at length to figure out what system will work best for their needs and to get them to file with the IRS and state for their tax rates. So for instance, when a new business in Virginia is set up with payroll, then you are going to file with the state of Virginia to let them know. You're going to file some documentation to let them know that you're starting payroll, and and they're going to ask you for your EIN number, etc. So there are going to be some things that you're definitely going to have to work with the client for in order to set up payroll. There are lots of options for payroll. So let's get into an example of payroll, just so that you can kind of see how all of this stuff kind of comes together. So the first example I'm going to go through is payroll for a lumber corporation. And the accounting software that they use is QuickBooks Desktop with enhanced payroll added to that. So very often for QuickBooks and for other accounting softwares, payroll is an additional subscription onto your already set up subscription for their software. Now, the way that this payroll works is it's weekly payroll for this business. And basically this is the outline of how I run payroll every week. And I run it on Thursday so that the guys can have their checks on Fridays. That's when they expect their paycheck. So the client emails me a list of the employees that have worked for that week and the hours for each. Some are salary, some have a base rate to pay, others are just straight hours. And their hourly rate is already entered into QuickBooks. So I go in, I enter the hours into the payroll center. I check the dates of the payroll period to make sure that they're actually for the week that I'm trying to process payroll for. And literally, I hit run payroll. I hit submit. It's not that bad. I just verify that everything's right. And then I print the paycheck stubs because this company doesn't have printed checks. So I print the paycheck stubs. You are legally obligated to hand those out with payroll. And then I also send a PDF of that report to the client so that they have that for their record. And then I write the paychecks out so that the check itself and the pay stub that was printed goes to the employee. The pay stub is going to have things like the breakdown of withholdings. It's going to have the hours worked, whereas the paycheck itself is just going to have a total for the pay period. Underneath of that, I've listed that for this company, I have weekly federal withholding to file, which includes Social Security and Medicare, and then weekly state withholding to file as well, which means those are additional payments that the company makes for payroll liabilities. And quarterly federal unemployment and state unemployment tax payments, which that's what FUTA and SUTA stand for. This is what that looks like, that payroll center for the Lumber Corporation in QuickBooks Desktop. So you'll see that literally I'm on step 1 here of the payroll center where I literally enter the payroll information. And I go down and I click beside the employees' names. All the employees' names come up here. And I click beside the ones that I want to include in the payroll and the ones that I'm not including in the payroll. I make sure that the pay period is correct for when it's ending and when the check date is going to be. And then when I go over here and I hit continue, I will then click on each employee's name to enter the number of hours that they worked. So hourly, you'll see their rate should be in here. And then I'm putting in how many hours they worked at that rate. If I need to change their rate, then I can in the next screen. And then I literally hit submit and payroll is run for this company. Again, I still have to go in weekly and do their withholding payments, but that is kind of separate. A second example for payroll, to be honest, I put a little asterisk here because I don't have any payroll run on any other software right now. But I'm about to set up payroll for a very small business with a payroll software called OnPay. If you end up looking and researching for a client on what payroll service is best, you'll find that they're very similar prices, but OnPay happened to be the last time I checked the cheapest at like $30 a month, and then $2 or $4 per employee on top of that. So this small business that I'm about to talk about really only has payroll for one person, and that's why this was the best option. And the payroll example is really very, very, very basic. And I let this be encouraging to you that payroll does not have to be complicated. Okay, so I select the employees that are going to be paid. I enter the hours for that payroll period. I literally run the payroll. I used to use OnPay for one of my previous clients, and so I knew that it was going to be easy for the new business that I'm setting payroll up for. And what's really nice about OnPay, what's really nice about payroll in general, if the employees are able to do direct deposit, is that once you run payroll, direct deposit is automatically sent if it's previously set up. Again, though, if it's not, and this is a really small business with 1, 2, 3 employees getting paid on the payroll, then it's not going to take you long to write those checks anyway. This is just a little screen snippet of what OnPay looks like when you run payroll through it. So I'm going to scroll down just a little here if I can. But the program literally says to select employees. You start here. I don't know who this person is. This is a fake example, but you select the employee, then you enter the hours for the employee, review the payroll just to make sure that the calculations are correct, and then you approve and run the payroll. And so again, very simple for a small business. And Payroll has been something that I've been really excited to learn because I think that it's something really valuable to provide for my clients. There are many clients that I have right now that if I did not run payroll, I would not be the person for their business. It's one of the most important things that I do for them, and they want to make sure it's done correctly, done well, done in a timely fashion. So it's definitely a service that I think it can be really beneficial for you to provide. But again, it does not have to be scary. The other thing about that's great about something like OnPay is that they will actually file those withholdings for you. So I'm going to go back to that page just for a second so that I can kind of, OnPay is really good about making the withholding payments for you on whatever schedule you need. And then at the end of the year, they just send you summary reports of your withholding payments. So this would definitely be something that I recommend if you want to provide payroll services for a company that doesn't have payroll already set up. And this will take some of that stress off of your plate as a bookkeeper. You guys, I hope that this has been helpful. Please leave me comments down below, and I will see you next time.